Okay, Rabbi Yisrael, let's get started here. A couple of people aren't going to be here today, so we're going to be, as they say here, cave mitzvah sam probably. So let us get started. Okay, so we're going to do something that we haven't done. We're going to start the next chapter, uh, which is page Reshut Zayin, Maimar Chav Gimel. That's where we got up to last time. I'm not going to do the whole one. It gets a little technical because if you recall, the Gemara has machlokas between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Lezer going back and forth on the psukim, and after going through it several times, I decided that it's that won't fit into the framework of our shir, so we're going to skip around a little bit, but there's some ikar points that I do want to get to in this chapter. Okay, so we're going to start here on Maimar Chav Gimel. Okay, a couple people disappeared on me, yeah, so I'm talking to nobody right now. Okay, good. So the Gemara says as follows, right? It's part of the same Gemara. Omar lo Rebbe Lezer Rabbi Yeshua, v'alo kvar nemar shuvu elai v'shuvu aleichem. So Rebbe Lezer is the one who the Mandi Omar who holds that tshuva has to come from Am Yisrael. So it says, Amar lo Rebbe Lezer Rabbi Yeshua, it says, Shuvu Elai, first you return to me, V'yashuva Aleichem, and I'll return back to you. Amar lo Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Yeshua said back to him, V'alo kvar nemar ki anochi ba'alti b'chem, v'lakachti eschem, echad me'ir u'shnayim mimishpocha, ve'evesi eschem siyah. I have been your Baal, I've taken you by force, I'm going to take you, one from a city and two from a family, and I will bring you to Tzia. Those are the psukim the Gemara brings. Okay, so we're going to focus on a certain element of this chapter. So we'll start with the beginning. Hanuvua mazhira ala tshuva. What is the point of nevuah? So we'll see from the Lashon Rambam that the yesod of nevuah. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring about this institution called Nevi'im? Why do we need Nevi'im? What does the HaKadosh Baruch Hu hope to bring to us through the power of Nevuah? So it says, Nevuah mazhira ala tshuva. Tshuva elai v'shuva elechem. V'mamar kodem, in the previous mamar, that's what one that we just finished last week. Lamadnu al tanat Rabbi Yoshua. We learned about Rabbi Yeshua's claim, Sheheviat HaPasuk Chinam Nimkartem, L'lamed Shegam HaTshuva, right? That also the Tshuva, Shehi Etzem Hitorerut V'Ratzon Shetiyeh Geula, the Tshuva, which is the awakening and the desire that there should be a Geula, Tzricha Shetavo Milamala. This is Rabbi Yeshua's claim and his understanding that the initiation is going to come from above. Amar lo Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, v'lo kvar nemar shuv elai v'shuv aleichem. V'kavanato, it means to say from this pasuk, shemizeh nireh lehedya, for this we see exclusively, shetzarich sheklal Yisrael yashuvu tchila l'Hakadosh Baruch Hu. V'rak achar kach ashuva aleichem. First, we have to do tshuva, then afterwards. And the Baruch Hu is asking us. Okay, so Hanvi'im etzavim ala tshuva. So this is our delving into the question of what's the issues here between Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. V'nei hapasuk shuvu elai v'shuva aleichem ze chelek me'adiburim ha'achronim shel nevuah lifnei shenechtam chazon. So this is in the last chapter of Malachi, right? This pasuk of shuvu elai v'shuvu aleichem, right? And part of the haftorah of Shabbos HaGodol, and it says that, right? And so this is part of the diburim ha'achronim shel nevuah. right? These are the last words of prophecy that were written, they were given to Am Yisrael, Lifnei shenechtam chazon, before the chazon, before the vision, before the prophecies were sealed off. V'le'atid lavo hanevuah tachzor. And when the Geula comes in the future, right, the prophecy will return. K'dechsiv, as the pasuk says in the Novi Yoel, ve'ayach rechein, after the exile, afterwards, eshpochet ruchi al kol basar, I will pour my spirit upon every flesh. V'nibu'u b'neichem uvnosechem, right, and your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Ziknechem chalomot yachlomun, your elders will dream dreams. Bachurim yechezionot yiru, and your young men will see visions. Right, so that's the prophecy that this is the Navi Yoel tells us that there will be a return to prophecy. It's one of the things that we can expect and look forward to when the Mashiach comes and when the Geula comes. That not only will there be a Beis Hamikdash with Korbanos and all of the other and the Malchus Beis David, which will rule over the world, but there will also be prophecy. But until then, ein lanu yoter nevuah. Right? So from the days of Malachi, which was the beginning of the second Beis Hamikdash, until today, there is no prophecy. Ume'ikrei inyan hanevuah hu atzivui al tshuva. One of the main inyanim of nevuah is the commandment to do tshuva. In other words, the Nevi'im are there to constantly remind us, to prod us, to come back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're there to remind us of the fact that we have moved away, strayed away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that we have to come back. Ukamoshe katav HaRambam. The Rambam says, Shekol HaNevi'im kulam tzivu ala tshuva. The language of the Rambam is that all the prophets, right, commanded tshuva. And you look at the footnote, right, he quotes the lashon of the Rambam and Re'ei Hilchos Tshuva Perek Zayin. It says, "Kol Nevi'im kulam tzivu ala tshuva, ve'ein Yisrael nigalim ela b'tshuva." Right, and Israel is only going to be redeemed with tshuva. Right, and this we said that that's going to be according to both shittas, whether we have to be the ones who initiate, or Hashem will be the one who initiates it from above. But the Geula has to be accompanied with tshuva. Ukvar hivticha Torah shesof Yisrael asot tshuva b'sof galutan. That we're going to do tshuva at the end of our exile, at the end of the galus. Umiyarin nigalim, and as soon as we do tshuva, there will be redemption. Shenema vayaki yavo alecha kol havorim. Right, Shavta Hashem V'Shav Hashem Lokecha. Right, the Psukim say that after all of the things that happened, we're on page Reish Yud Zayin. Right, all the things that have happened, they will you will return to Hashem Lokecha, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will return and gather you in for the exile. So that's so. Right. So all the Nevi'im kulam tzivu Hashem. U'b'makom acher bi'arnu. Moshe says in another place we have explained. Where's the makor of the Rambam that this is one of the essential effects of the tasks, responsibilities of the Navi is from the Gemara Megillah. Gedola hasarat tabat yoter me'arba'im v'shmona nevi'im v'sheva neviot shenitna b'olam Yisrael. It says that when Achashverosh removed his ring, his tabat, and he gave it to Haman, and this was the sign that Haman was empowered to implement his terrible decree. And the Gemara says that hasarat tabat, that removal of the ring, the giving over the power of Haman, right, was more powerful and more effective than the 48 prophets and the 7 prophetesses who prophesied for Israel. Shekulam lo echzirim lemutav. All of them did not succeed in bringing Israel back to the proper path. Ve'ilu asarat tabat echziratan lemutav. But in the story of Purim, this is when Bnei Yisrael did a final, or not final, but an ultimate tshuva, which brought Am Yisrael back totally to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. More effective and more powerful than all of the nevuos that existed, that took place in the hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years between the time of Yitzias Mitzrayim until the time of Haman. So this is the makar of the Rambam. Moshe is saying is that you see that this is what Nevi'im are all about. The Nevi'im are all about, their main task, their main mission is to bring us back to Tshuva. And the Gemara said, and they really didn't succeed so well. Doesn't mean that they failed totally, but of course, every Navi, there are people who listen and people who didn't listen. Like today, you go to you hear a shmuz, and some people listen and some people don't listen. But the Am Yisrael as a klal didn't help. It didn't take effect. Wasn't effective and certainly not as powerfully as Ham with the guy. So the next page, Rachel Ches. So Ba'ofen Shemuvua.
Rabbi, when we speak about teshuva, is it a quality or is it a quantity? What do you imply by that?
Well, we'll see again. Well, that's a good question, but we'll talk about it. In other words, at the special tshuva of Am Yisrael, the time of Haman, right? The Gemara discusses it. The Gemara talks about the new Kabbalah Satorah that happened, right? The fact that we'll see. We'll talk about that. That there was a qualitative change in Am Yisrael's relationship to Torah and mitzvahs, right? At the time of the Kabbalah Satorah, at the time of Achashverosh, as the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos, and we'll come to that in a few minutes. Okay, but certainly that tshuva and the tshuva that we're hoping for is you're making a very good point. Is that it's not just we're going to do more mitzvahs. It's going to have a very deep effect on us and change our whole attitude and perspective.
Rav,
yeah.
Was what about the removal of the ring led Am Yisrael to do tshuva? Was it pachad? What was it that they heard? What was the
So that's a good question. Again, we'll talk about it more. But the push-up shot is that we're talking about the realization, the pachad, that our lives are totally, dependent on a Kodesh Baruch Hu. In other words, we'll see that al b'derech hateva, it's that the Haman is in control, and there's a gzeira lahashmi laharug alabed et kol Yehudim, and so that brought us to our senses. That made us see that what the truth of our existence is, and that we've been kind of faking ourselves out a little bit and thinking that we could get away with less than a total commitment. Okay? But we'll see. Let's move on, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. Ba'ofen, in the top of the page, Reshut Chet, Ba'ofen shemevuar, shekol neviim tzivu al tshuva v'lo echzirim lemutav. They all did it. They all commanded about tshuva, but they didn't succeed. V'rak hasarat tabat ho'ila lachziram lemutav. It was only the removal of the ring which was effective. V'mevuar she'elu hem hamilim hachronot she'akadosh baruch hu sholech et hanavi lomar. Ze shuvu elai v'shuvu aleichem amar Hashem tzvakot. Ayin sham. Right? In other words, it's the pasuk that Kadosh Baruch Hu says that this is the last words that the Navi said. Right? So he says pashut shebepam ha'achrona she'Kadosh Baruch Hu mitzaveh al tshuva. This is the last opportunity that we have, that Kadosh Baruch Hu, last occasion that Kadosh Baruch Hu commanded us to do tshuva. This is a commandment of the final tshuva, which will be, through that there will be a veshuva aleichem. And so, therefore, right, so as we will see, we're going to connect this with the Gzeros Koshos Kohavan that we learned about. Because what did Rabbi Yeshua tell us? That how is HaKadosh Baruch Hu going to bring about the tshuva of Am Yisrael, right? As in contrast to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer that Am Yisrael is going to do it from milamata, as the awakening is going to come from below, right? According to Rabbi Yeshua, it's going to come from above. And how is it going to bring this about? Through the Gzeros Koshos Kohama. So what the parallel that we're going to see is that we're going to experience something which is equivalent to the Asoras HaTabas. It was just like the equivalent, only the Asoras HaTabas in the time of Achashverosh and Haman was effective. So therefore, that's why we're going to need a Xeros Koshos Kohaman, which will be equivalent to that. And this is going to bring us back to that same level of tshuva, which we experienced then. And that's going to be and that's the tshuva that the Navi Malachi was commanding us. Because he says, Shuva Elaiva, Shuva Lechem. Right? You're going to do tshuva. And what tshuva are you going to do? We're going to do the tshuva of, as we will see.
But that's Rav, that's the tshuva of Yira, not Me'ahava, no?
What?
Isn't that
No, because again, in Rashi it says the kiblu me'ava. There is kimu v'kiblu. There is it affected them so deeply, right? And remember, Rashi there says in Shabbos also, it was me'avas hanes. In other words, the kimu v'kiblu. They experienced going from the pachad to the salvation, which brought them to a total tshuva. Okay, now as I said earlier, we're going to skip a little bit because as I said, some of this is technical and things that I don't think will be so effective for us. But I do want to read a certain section here, which is I think very, very fundamental, and Moshe has spoken about in other places as well, and that is on the bottom of Reish Chaf Aleph. Okay. Because here he discusses Hatshuva, right? Chazara l'dargat Sinai. What is tshuva? Tshuva means returning to the level that the Jewish people were at the time of Har Sinai. Kviat dargat Sinai l'dorot. When Bnei Yisrael were at Har Sinai, we reached a certain madrega, a certain level of closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We said Nasa v'nishma, and we received the Torah mipi agavura. So he says. So what happens is that the whole point of Nevi'im is to reconnect us with the madrega that we're at Har Sinai, and he brings the psukim that indicates this. Okay? Well, we'll see as we go along. V'nireh at the bottom of the page there, on page Reish Chaf Aleph, she'atshuva haba'a mikoach melech kashek Haman hi hatshuva hamu'ula biyoter. That is the highest form of tshuva. That's the only one that was the one that affected Sheyesh. Ukemo shemevur berama megemara megillah sheveinu le'el she'af shetachlit kol hanavim hu bishvil hatshuva. And even though the tachlis, the goal, the purpose of all the Nevi'im was to bring tshuva, befoal ma shevi et tshuva shekol hanavim kivnu eleo, that tshuva that all of the Nevi'im were intended to, directed us to, right? Ze asarat tabat, she'achashverosh natan et tabat hamelech leHaman, giving the ring over. V'ze hevi et klal Yisrael lamatzaf kazeh shebitlu et hamodah shel Ma'amad Har Sinai, shebazeh hem kavu ba'atzmam et madrega shel Ma'amad Har Sinai l'dorot. This is what happened, because the Gemara tells us in Masechet Shabbos that it says in the Megillah, at the end of the Megillah Sester, it says Kimu v'kiblu ha'Yehudim. There was a kiyum of a re-accepting of the Torah, right? Because the Gemara says that when the Bnei Yisrael received the Torah, the Gemara says that it was Kofa Aleim Har Kegigis, HaKadosh Baruch Hu held the mountain over them and forced us to accept the Torah, and that gave Am Yisrael a kind of excuse, a moda'ah, is this to say that we're not accepting the Torah b'leiv shalem, and therefore there was some kind of an excuse, right, for not keeping the Torah, and there was some kind of reservation that the Bnei Yisrael had in terms of the relationship to Torah. It wasn't a total, absolute hitbatlut to the Torah, but there was some holding back of that, and that's right. And that, but the point of tshuva is to come back to a madrega, which is even greater than the madrega of Har Sinai, because as it says that that they were makabel the Torah be'ava, and they were makabel the Torah in a stronger way than at Har Sinai. Ha'omek hadavar, next paragraph. She'arei kol koach hanavua she'ba'olam nimshach mimamad Har Sinai. In other words, how does prophecy work? So it's an extension of Ma'amad Har Sinai. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed himself to us at Har Sinai in the most explicit and obvious way. He spoke to us. Right? Am Yisrael heard, right? All of Am Yisrael heard the first two Dibros, right? And they heard the word for word, and right? And they heard the other Dibros, even though they were not so intelligible. They needed Moshe's intervention to explain it to them. But Am Yisrael saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right, at Har Sinai. And all nevuos, if we understand that all nevuos are kind of spin-off of that original experience, that the Nevi'im are kind of bringing us back to and saying, okay, right, we are the continuation of Moshe Rabbeinu, as the Pasuk will say, we'll see that in a minute. We're continuing the mission of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was the prophet, with the Hey Ayadiyah, the ultimate prophet, Lo Kam Yisrael Moshe, right? And he, right, but Kodesh Baruch Hu said, okay, we're going to have, in the generations to follow, we're going to have Nevi'im who are going to continue the mission of Moshe Rabbeinu. The purpose of Nevuah was that there should be a continuation of Ma'amad Har Sinai. That when we heard a Novi speak, so it was brought back to us that this is the voice of Sinai speaking to us. Right? That the voice of Sinai was brought into our generation, right? It could be 5 generations, 10 generations later, right? It was brought into our generation. This is the continuation. As it says explicitly, this is what you asked for at the day at Har Sinai. At the Yom HaKahal. Yom HaKahal is the day of Ma'amad Har Sinai, the day when the whole congregation gathered together. Lo osef, what did you say? Lo osef l'shmoat kol Hashem Elokai. I do not want to continue to hear the voice of Hashem. And I don't want to see this great fire, v'lo amut, so that I shouldn't die, because there was a pachad that the Bnei Israel experienced, that this kirva to Hashem would bring about something which they couldn't handle and they couldn't contain. Vayom Hashem Elai, and Moshe Rabbeinu says, Hashem said to me, Hey tivu asher diberu. Yes, they spoke well. This is indeed appropriate, what they said. And what's going to be? Navi akim lahem mikir b'chahem kamocha. I will bring a prophet from mikir b'chahem, from amongst their brothers, kamocha, like you. V'natati devarai b'fiv, and I will put my word in his mouth. V'diber alehem et kol asher alehem atzavenu, and I will speak to them, and he will speak to them everything that I'll command them. But often shemavuar. So here we see explicitly in the pasuk, Hashem natan nevuah ke'emshech shel Ma'amad Har Sinai. As they said, we can't handle Har Sinai, right? We need intermediaries who will communicate more directly with them, and the Navi will give it over, and Hashem agreed, and that's the thing that. But he says there will be prophecies like Kamocha, like Moshe Rabbeinu. V'zeu shekol hanavim nitnabu al tshuva, hainu lahachzir et klal Yisrael ledargat Ma'amad Har Sinai. Right? They say, okay, we have to do tshuva because at that point, Am Yisrael had reached the pinnacle of their connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it's to bring us back to a situation where we have communication from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where when we learn the Torah, when we hear the Torah, we say we can put ourselves back into the situation that this is the voice of Hashem speaking to us, and when we learn the Torah, we hear Hashem speaking to us at any given moment.
This paragraph, Rabbi, challenged my understanding of what the Navi is, because I thought having a Nevuah means you can be a better stock picker or like a weatherman, but that pretty much means you perceive reality on a different level right now.
Yeah, I mean, the Nevi'im were, on a level where the Rambam discusses at length the level, what it means to be a prophet, but it means that they had refined themselves, refined their physicality to a point where their physical selves did not stand between them and HaKadosh Baruch Hu to that extent, and therefore they were able to feel the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's being in the world much more intimately than we can feel it, right? Because they had refined themselves and purified themselves.
So
Right?
it's about the present, not as much as the future.
Again, it's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu could communicate to them the future as well. In other words, it was a present mind state of being connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which enabled them to receive communications from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed what he wanted to reveal, but I don't know if it was in general, certainly if not all cases, the point of these revelations were to tell the people what's going to happen so that they would do tshuva. It says, if you don't do tshuva, so then, the Babylonians or the Syrians, they're going to come in and they're going to destroy, and you have to know what's going to happen, right? So all of the prophecies of the future were also intended to bring Am Yisrael back to their service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? So it was all about tshuva, and again, but the ikar of being a navi was being, in communication with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, being able to receive, to fine tune your antenna so that they would be able to be sensitive to the messages. Okay, so let's move on. V'achreisha nevuah nigmara, and after prophecy is ended, right? We said at the beginning of the Second Temple period, ke'et enkvar zecher lemamar har Sinai. Okay, so now we don't have this anymore. We, in our experience, don't have what our forefathers had in the time of the first Beis Hamikdash. The first Beis Hamikdash, you had the Yeshaya and Yirmiyahu and the other prophets who were walking around and connecting with Ma'amad Har Sinai. So if you were in the presence of a Navi, right, you heard, you heard Har Sinai, right? It's like today, in a certain smaller sense, people will run to hear somebody who, my generation, somebody who saw the Chafetz Chaim, right? Because when he when he tells over what the Chafetz Chaim saw, it was said, I heard Rabbeim who heard things from the Chafetz Chaim, right? So so you were connected. You felt that you were connected to some existence on some higher level of relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we don't have anymore. Oh, but somebody who was zocha to see the Chafetz Chaim. Oh, that was something that was remarkable. So again, everybody in their generation, has, but at the times of the Nevi'im, the first temple, so the first Beis Hamikdash, there was, but after that, so then we didn't have that anymore. There was nobody to say, I am here as a direct continuation of Moshe Rabbeinu, and when I'm speaking with the authority or the closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which we experienced at Har Sinai. No, we don't have that anymore. Ad kedei kach she'omru li Yecheskel, right? The Gemara that says gives over the paraphrases the conversation between Yecheskel and the Zakanim, who were about to they were in the Golus of Bavel, and they were about to despair of the hope of being redeemed from the Golus of Bavel and returning to Eretz Yisrael. So they asked him, Evet shemocho rabo v'isha gersho bailo klum yesh lazel zeh klum. He says, a slave who is sold by his master or a woman who is divorced, do they have any claim on each other? What kind of claim does HaKadosh Baruch Hu have on us, and what kind of claim do we have on him? Gamarnu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a get, and we're at, so there's no future for us. V'atshuva shel Purim sheba al yedei hasarat tabat, the tshuva of Purim, which came through this ring, the removal of the ring, heviet Klal Yisrael chazara l'maimar Har Sinai b'li koach hanevuah. This is the chiddush of what happened there. In the Nes of Purim, there was no more Nevi'im. Again, the Nevi'im, at least in where they were, there wasn't a koach nevuah. right? And they went back to Maimon Har Sinai b'li koach hanavua, right? Okay, and so that was the koach of bringing us back to the, let's say, the Nasa v'nishma, and even stronger than of what happened back in Sinai. Yeter al kain. Furthermore, kol inyan ma'amar Har Sinai sheyad ko haya mitoch kviat har kegigit. Right, as the Gemara says, that they went beyond, right, the level that was originally there, because all the level of Sinai was kviat har kegigit, was hanging the mountain over them like a barrel. B'mchinat ansuhu v'zavin, as the Gemara's language is, what happens if somebody forces you to sell? Right? What happens if somebody forces you to sell? Right? And you sell, because under duress you sell. Right? So there, the halacha is that the sale is effective, right? If you're forced to sell, because the Gemara says, because once you got the money, right, so then you decided, okay, listen, if I got the money, then then okay. So even though I didn't want to sell it, but you accepted it. The Gemara says that in contrast, that if they force you to give a gift, right, so then the gift is not effective, because you really don't want to give the gift. You're just saying yes in order to they don't beat you up. So therefore, it doesn't count. But even if they're threatening to kill you, to beat you up, or to harm you, and you sell, so that's effective, right? So that was the getter of the Bnei Yisrael were, right? They accepted the Torah. Okay? They accepted the Torah, but they accepted it because Baruch Hu held the mountain over their head, and they said, okay. They say once you force us to do it, so we want it, and we'll see. He's going to describe very interestingly the chiluk between the two, right? Okay. ותחת הסכנה של מודו רבה בבחינת אנסוע וזובין, ותחת הסכנה של מודו רבה וראיסה, that מודעה, the fact that the mountain was held, and they said, okay, we're accepting it, but we're accepting it with a kind of reservation. אבל אחרי התשובה של הסרת הטבעת, כבר הגיעו מעצמם למעלת הר סיני באהבה וברצון. But after that, they reached the Mala of Har Sinai, the Ava B'Ratzon, out of love and of their own Ratzon. So he says is that this was the most effective way to bring us back to tshuva, right? And more so than anything that the prophets could tell us, and there's the koach. So now he's going to say an interesting Lom de Shechilek, which is one of the things that I wanted to share with you, is what's the difference between the Har Kegigis, holding the mountain over the head, and the ring, the removal of the ring. In other words, both of them were a kind of coercion. So why was one more effective than the other? V'yesh l'damot. So he says that you can compare the chiluk ben kfiyat hakegil lebein asarat hatabat lechiluk shebein avodah zara mitoch ones nefashot lebein mitrapim beavodah zara. There's interesting halacha, right, in the Rambam, right, that as we know as follows, right? We know that if somebody threatens a person, says, "Be oved avodah zara, or I'll kill you." What's the halacha? What do? You're oved zara, or you're not oved avodah zara. And you got to get killed, right? It's one of the three cardinal averos. You're not oved avodah zara. But says the Rambam, right, if you were oved avodah zara, right, you weren't mekadesh shem shemayim. You didn't have the moral fortitude to stand up to the test, and you gave in, and you're oved avodah zara. Says the Rambam, you're potter from punishment, okay? Because at the end of the day, you were forced. It was an onus. You didn't do a baba, and the Torah doesn't punish you for an onus. Okay? That's an interesting, but that's the halacha, right? That's at least the way the Rambam paskins. Could be other Rishonim disagree, but the Rambam paskins that's generally accepted halacha, that you're potter from the punishment of misa if you coerced, even though you didn't do what you're supposed to do, but you're not chayav misa for the avera avodah zara, because you transgressed avodah zara, the onus. However, there's another interesting halacha. What happens if you're sick, person is sick, and the only way to cure himself is by taking a medicine which has an isur avodah zara? Let's say a medicine which is taken from an asherah tree. Right? Okay. The doctor says, right, that you're sick, you're sakonas nefashos, you're going to die, But there's a medicine. If you take a medicine from the sashera tree, you're going to live. So the halacha is it's usher for you to take that medicine. Right? It's the same isser, right? So it's the isser avodah zarah, and the isser avodah zarah says not only is it for worshiping the avodah zarah, but all of the other negative commandments that are associated with avodah zarah. They're called abizrayud avodah zarah, the things that are associated with avodah zarah. Also, they have a din of yehareg val yavor. You're not allowed to be. You have to be transgressed. Says the Rambam, and if you took that medicine, you get punished. Right? As the Rambam uses loshen onesh hara'ui, according to many Rishonim or many poskim, it means you get chayav misa. So what's the difference? In both cases, you transgressed, right? And out of duress, right? One place the guy was put a gun to your head and said, "Over the clear," and the other one, you were sick, and right? So you didn't do it. Right? You're not an Ovid Avodah Zarah, but you didn't do it. So Moshe and there's many Meforshim explain it this way, right? What's the difference between them? So he says as follows, right? She'af sheshnehem pa'alu mitoch sakanat nefashot. Right, both of these people, the one who was over the avodah zarah because of the gun held to his head, or the one who ate the avodah zarah because he was sick, they were both did what they did because of the sakana nefashot. But still, ha'anus, the first one, the one who was forced to do the act, nitpas etzleinu ki'ilu ein ha'maser shelo klal. We understand this, that our understanding is that this is not his maisa. His maisa is completely right forced upon him. In other words, he didn't do it. Right? The guy who held the gun to his head is the one who caused him to do it, and therefore it's not considered his maisa. And in general, in halacha, this is one of the accepted understandings of what the Torah of onus is. That onus means it's not your maisa. Right? It's something which was something that came not from within you at all. However, aval hamitrapei b'avodah zarah ze b'bchirato hamalea. This is his free will. Right? Even though had he not healed himself, he would have died. But he is making a decision. Right? Nobody is coercing him to do this act. Right? He's faced with a decision. Right? Right? I have a free will. Right? The act to drink this medicine, which is isur avodah zarah or not. So since he is acting totally out of his free will, that's considered to be, he did it. He decided to do it. Right? And what he decided to do was, because again, nobody forced him to do this act. Right? He was sick and he wanted to save himself. So we say, sorry, right? This was not allowed. You were transgressed the Isra Avodah Zarah and you're chayiv your punishment. Okay, this is in general a way to understand this chiluk, and it's applied also in different areas of halach and sales and things like that. There's a difference between doing something out of your own will because you decided to do it in order to save yourself, or because you were mamish coerced into the act. So he says this is the chiluk that Rav Moshe wants to say, is the chiluk between these two ways that the Torah was forced upon us. V'kachu ha'hevdel ben kfiyat har kegigit shekula ones l'bein hasarat hatabat. In other words, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu held the thing over our head, that was a situation where it was like holding a gun to our head. So l'maisa, when we did it, we did something which we were forced to do. The act was forced upon us. And so therefore there was something missing in our connection to the act. So the act of Kabbalah Sator, there's something missing in it, because it was just like if the guy holds the gun to your head, I didn't do it on the negative side. it wasn't my act. So when the HaKadosh Baruch Hu held the mountain over their head, so they were in a state of physical danger. So therefore their reaction was something which isn't so attributable to their inner desires. Because they did it. Because what can we do? We got this we got this mountain hanging over our head. But this is the difference between that lebein asarat tabat. But when removing the room, shehiviat klal Yisrael legalot avatam hachutza. This brought Am Yisrael to reveal their ahava, right? To reveal it to the outside, to the outside. Livchor b'torah b'mamad arsina mitoch ratzon malei. But here they were in a situation where they brought themselves to say, "We want." Right? In other words, they didn't. They said this brought out their most inner desire. They said, "This is what we want. We're choosing to do this, and because we're choosing to do this, so therefore we have therefore it's a more internal decision, and therefore it reached a higher level of avo and ratzon." That's the chiluk that he says, and so therefore Am Yisrael, that's going to be ultimately the tshuva of the Xeros Koshos Kohaman, that we're going to come back to that level of avot to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and ratzon, that it's going to be something that we want to do, that we decided that out of our free will we want to do it. Right? Okay, and so that's how he explains it. Okay. That's what's going to be at the final redemption. Shema shekatuv umetzauhu raot rabot v'tzarot. The pasuk says in Parashas Vayelech, and they will find the many evils will find them, many tzaros. V'yomar bayom hahu, right, and they will say, this will be the beginning of their tshuva. Why are all these terrible things happening to me? Because God is not with me. As the pasuk says earlier in the Dvarim, in Parashas Vayeschanan, "V'shavtat Hashem Elokecha v'shamato b'kolo." You'll return ki kel rachum Hashem Elokecha lo yarpecha v'lo yashchitecha. The Baruch Hu is kel rachum. He will not let you alone. He will not destroy you. Lo yishkach et brit avotecha, and you will not forget the covenant of your fathers that you nishba lehem. And then referring to the psukim that we didn't say, and so but the pasuk that we skipped before, but there's a pasuk that says that there will be one from a family and one from the city and two from the family will return. It says, according to the opinion of Rabbi Yoshua, ve'otam echad me'ir u'shnai mishpacha, that those special individuals, hamevurarim shebechal Yisrael, the ones who are chosen, the ones who are picked out, the ones who will be the ones to represent all of Klal Yisrael. The pasuk says that I will save one in a family and two in a mishpacha. Right? That's what the way we saw that at the beginning of today's shir, right on page the beginning. It says, back on page Reish Zayin, when we quoted the Gemara. The pasuk quotes the pasuk, "V'lakachti etchem echad me'ir u'shnai mimishpacha, ve'veiti etchem tzion." All right, one from a city and two from a family. So bemet, the part that we didn't learn together, right? Moshe brings a machlokas later in the Gemara, right? That one opinion is, Reish Lakish's opinion is that enochinami, only a very small minority of the Jewish people will be saved, right? At the time of the Geula, one from a family and two from one from a city and two from a family. That's all, right? However, that was Reish Lakish's opinion, but Rabbi Yochanan said that can't be, right? That can't be that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be so cruel to us, and that the Geula is only going to happen to a small minority. And so Rabbi Yochanan explains that what it means is that I will take one from each family or two from each city, or one from each city and two from each family, and they will be the ones who bring back Klal Yisrael to tshuva. They're going to be like the forerunners of the tshuva, right? But the tshuva is going to reach everybody, and that's the halacha, right? That's how we pass like Rabbi Yochanan, Reish Lakish, where Moshe says in that section that Reish Lakish was more of the midas hadin, right? As he says, because we know that Reish Lakish started out by being a gangster, being a robber. Right? Reish Lakish was a midas hadin. And therefore, when he read the psukim, he interpreted the psukim literally. And the pasuk says, very few people are going to be redeemed. And Rabbi Yochanan said, no, that we can't read these psukim literally. We have to read these psukim more with empathy, with mercy, with the Kodesh Baruch Hu is that so that when if he says that he's going to do them, it's going to be the mevurarim, the chosen ones, and that's what the Ramesh is saying here, right? Right? On their account, tavo hagu'ula, the geula kaim, הם אלו שיגלו את הרצון הכללי של כל אלה התלויים בהם. And they will reveal that ratzon, which is common to all of the people who are dependent upon them. There will be the leaders. There will be at the forefront of the tzaddikim, the ones who are always going to be connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they will be the leaders, and the rest will follow along, and that will be the Geula. At the end of the day, right, everybody's tshuva will be a chayfetz. It's not something which is coerced, but something that will feel inside of us. This is what we really want to do. Right? This is we're going to be so moved by the events, right? By the miracles that we'll see from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by the events that are going to constrain us and force us, right? So, Zrat Hashem, as we've been saying all along, that the zeros that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring will hopefully we'll be able to hopefully preempt them and do tshuva before they get the squeeze gets too bad. But eventually we know that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take us, and the tzaddikim who are constantly connected with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu will lead us all to do the tshuva shleima. Okay, this is as much as we're going to do on this section here. The next section, which I'd like to start today, if you don't mind, is very, very interesting. It's very, very practical things which you all thought about, and so just to start Reish Chav Vav. Okay, if you can turn the page, Maimer Chav Dalet, Kirav Hagu'ula. Here Moshe talks about a very interesting topic, right? What are we allowed to do, and what in terms of bringing Mashiach, so to speak, okay? And what is called the chikat haketz. Okay? In other words, it's also to force the end, right? The chikat haketz is something which is also, but where do you draw the line, right? Do you go around putting tefillin on people in order to bring Mashiach, right? Things like that, right? And Moshe has his strong opinions about that, as we will see, right? And things like that, And he will also touch on the current structure of the government, the state of Israel, right? And how does that fit into the scheme of things? Is this part of the Geula? Is something separate from the Geula? Is it connected to the concept of Geula or not? And certainly there's enters into controversial territory, but that's what we're here for, right? To learn interesting things, okay, and see different sides of it. Okay, so that's the right. Okay, so let's just read the first couple of paragraphs, and then we'll end with that. That'll be a segue into starting this next week. Okay. Hitbayer mitoch esak asugya shemachlokas Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yoshua nogat b'nosei kremot. This is what we've been discussing the last couple of weeks. That the machlokas Rabbi Yoshua touches on a very, very fundamental point. B'ofen shebo mitavet ta'alich ha'geula. How is it going to be? How is the process? Kasher anafkimina l'maisa mikol zeh. What's enough? Ha'geula tluya banu. Is it going to be dependent upon us? V'mutal al ha'adam lakachat chelik b'avat ha'geula, and man has to take part in bringing the Geula. O shikula ba'ala milamayla, or is it going to come from above? Ad kedei kach she'afilu the tshuva of Klal Yisrael mechuyav lasot, she'Klal Yisrael mechuyav lasot tavo b'torah b'lala. It's going to be such a divinely inspired process that it's going to, even the tshuva is going, which normally we would say has to do with our own Yirat Shamayim and Akol B'dei Shamayim, Chutz Yirat Shamayim, even the tshuva has to come from above. Umuvuar kam beGemara shalocha Rabbi Yoshua. At the end of the Gemara, we didn't read all the psukim, but the Gemara, the conclusion of the Gemara is the halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua. The Geula is going to come from above. The Kodesh Baruch Hu is not going to wait. How do we know? Sharei shatak Rabbi Eliezer. Because the Gemara at the end of this long shakel v'tari, they're bringing back psukim back and forth. Rabbi Eliezer was silent, and this is the Maral writes is the sign that halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua. V'nim saying kain she'ein lanu. So this he says this is the conclusion Rabbi Moshe derives from this Gemara. Right? If the halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua, she'ein lanu la'asok me'atzmeinu b'inyanei Geula. We should not be taking any active role in the areas of Geula. El hakol tzarich lavo b'torut milamala. Everything has to come from above. Okay, and then he's going to talk about the Gra and the Aliyota that of the Talmidim of the Gra, the Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov, which took place in the end of the 18th century, the beginning of the 19th century. So what was their place and what were they thinking if the Geula has to come from above? Right. So he's going to try to make seder in this. Okay. But anyway, so הנושא הזה נוגע מאוד למעשה. וצריך ללמוד אותו מתוך דברי הימים של כלל ישראל. And we have to learn it, right, by learning history. אמנם הדבר קשה עלינו, it's very difficult, משום שהעסק בדברי הימים צריך להיות בגדרי Torah. We're not writing history books, right? We're learning Torah. And we have to learn history as we learn Torah. The only history that we have in the Torah is right through the end of the second Beis Hamikdash. Right, this is where our history book ends, so to speak. Because of the significance of the subject, this is mamish relevant. And since this is what we're talking about, we learn the Gemara, we're going to go into this as much as possible. We'll stop here. As you see, the next title, Aliyat Talmidei Agra Baal Shem Tov, and he's going to say things that try to help us understand where we, according to his opinion, according to his understanding of Chazal, where we as the Jewish people today in our time, in our contemporary times, should fit into this process. What is our role in trying to bring about prepare the way for Mashiach? How active, how not active should we be in thinking about these things? Okay, that's why I just wanted to introduce that as the next topic. B'ezrat Hashem, we will be talking about this next week. Should give us koyach. B'ezrat Hashem. Okay, so everybody should have a good week, and right, don't let
thank you all
don't let current events drive you crazy. Just remember, everything is milamala. Everything Kodesh Baruch Hu runs the world. And as I said the other day, somebody asked, "What do you think about the fact that Trump flip flops all the time?" I said, "There is no such thing as Trump. It's all Kodesh Baruch Hu, right?" And the only independent variable, as I said last week, is us. We do what's right, and Kodesh Baruch Hu rewards us. We do what's wrong, so then Kodesh Baruch Hu punishes us. So B'ezrat Hashem will do what's right, and then everything will work out. Kol Tuv, have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you.